There's something innately terrifying and dystopian about leaving your existence in the hands of abstract laws and regulations, designed by undemocratic state and/or corporate visions that doesn't have you nor humanity in mind. In the most tame examples, we see this at borders. We see it in emergency rooms, in prisons, in cities under siege. That moment when your existence becomes provisional. We often visualize control and arbitration of life and death in colonies, law enforcement, prisons, material institutions, and places that you touch and feel. Yet, there is a new institution emerging. It's called automation. Traditional overseers becoming invisible, entangled in a web of various algorithms. The devil doesn't wear Prada. She runs procurement and flags you for review. Your body contains a risk score. Your blood carries a percentage. The sovereign sword hasn't disappeared. It's been encoded, distributed across networks that hum quietly in dark server rooms. This isn't a metaphor. We see this everywhere, and it's accurately summed up by a Necropolitics in the 21st century digital age. Necropolitics is fascinating language, ambiguous in its form, but something that makes sense without knowing its immediate definition. Achille Mbembe, a Cameroonian political theorist, coined this term in a 2003 article on the post-colony, and further elaborates under a 2019 book of the title Necropolitics. Necropolitics is a theory around the use of large-scale social and political power in dictating whether someone may live or die. The logic of governance around death, but not only death, the slow suspension of life, the zombification of a population, the suspension of humanity that grants people rights, agency, and dignity. Mbembe's Necropolitics extends much of French philosopher Michel Foucault's concept of biopower and biopolitics. In the mid-20th century, Foucault noticed how the state operates through the management and regulation of people's bodies, the intersection of biological life and political power. Foucault noted how this regulation doesn't need to happen by way of material force, but a circular logic of optimization, regulatory control and healthcare policy, population control, surveillance, and biometric identification systems. Through the process of extreme classification, categorization of people, these systems of control then create ideological ethics that inform eugenics, austere policy around disability, and the general growth of bigotry. Foucault saw this biopolitics, a biological regulation of life, created and informed the moral pretense of what a correct biology, or person, is. Foucault noted a clear dystopian logic here, but Mbembe asked a fascinating question. What if true power wasn't only in the control of life? What if the real power is letting you die slowly? There are these zones now. Mbembe calls death worlds. Places not quite living, not quite dead. The space between we're processing your application and we've reached a decision. Actual geographies where law doesn't apply. International waters, Guantanamo Bay, military bases. This also relates back to the work of Italian philosopher Giorgio Agamben, where his concept of state of exception, the suspension of law, is the hidden logic of modern politics. Liberal democracy's promise of rights, liberty, due process is procured under its opposite, the suspension of law by violence, and the agency to uphold that law by destroying it. We see this everywhere in modern history. American intelligence agencies illegally overthrowing democratic, free nation states across the global south. the suspension of law for prisoners during the War on Terror, to new examples of our current administration arresting and deporting individuals without due process under a secret police, and ignoring court orders to abstain from those deportations. The distribution of necropolitics is anywhere from the processing of healthcare to kidnapping to unimaginable tangible violence, such that the actual you disappears, your humanity, but your blood test results, your movement patterns, your payment history remain. That's who you are and who they see. Necropolitics can be seen as an intersection of Foucault's biopolitics and Agamben's state of exception, but in the sense that power is being pursued by a logic of death, and when the logic is death, it's handed out to everybody. Mbembe traces necropolitics from apartheid in South Africa and other forms of 20th century colonialism. Colonialism is important here, as even the most positive narratives recognize its brutality, but justify it with the veneer of progress, gifts from the West onto the world. Yet, the kernel here is the brutality. In Belgium's Congo to French Algeria, the foundation was laid by the pretense that the West had an inherent authority to dictate who lived, and for those who could supposedly live, never were really recognized as humans. The citizens to these colonial death worlds, as Mbembe describes it, were more akin to the undead, waiting their turn to be processed within a colonial machine. During Mbembe's writing, we saw the Iraq War emerge. With congressional approval, the United States launched Operation Iraqi Freedom, a military operation to depose Iraq's Saddam Hussein, who, according to the Bush administration, garnered weapons of mass destruction. Nuclear bombs. After just the initial invasion, the Iraqi Body Count Project found at least 8,000 Iraqis were killed, with more estimates showing the number is as realistically high as 30,000. Yet, as history shows us, the United States never found a single weapon of mass destruction. Now, this is important, as horrific of a presentation around necropolitics, war, and colonialism is, Mbembe sees the result of this to be its true visual, the effect of it therein. When the United States and its allies destabilize the Middle East, Libya, and North Africa, it creates power vacuums that leave millions homeless, in starvation, and at immediate risk of death. It aids in creating what we would call extreme organizations that challenge existing governments in the Middle East. Syria is a contemporary example here. The people caught in the middle have nowhere to go, so they turn to the very countries that destroyed their homes. Not out of spite, but because it's the only place where they see opportunity and a life. But what we see is they are often drowned in the Mediterranean. They are villainized by states, labeled as an other that we can blame for a country's own economic woes, someone to blame for our alienation.
Roaming free to threaten peaceful citizens.
For those who are lucky, if we want to call it that, they are processed, rigorously vetted, ensuring their humanity meets the decorum of politicians and people who dismiss their humanity from the very presupposition that they are migrants, unworthy, subhuman, embedded into a system that zombifies their very existence. Yet, disturbingly in the 21st century, something new is emerging. That's the application of algorithms, predictive analytics, and in more contemporary lights, large language models we coin AI. The traditional bureaucracy of death has digitized, made invisible, wrapped in the neutral language of risk matrices in various analytics. The traditional arbiters of death are changing fast. With the beginnings of neoliberalism, state power as a truly independent institution has fallen immensely, now wrapped in corporate consolidation. This is where Palantir comes in. Many here likely have no idea who Palantir is. They aren't as well known as Google, Amazon, or Apple, yet they are quickly becoming the most powerful entity behind the scenes. Their market cap increasing by 23 times since 2023. Founded in part by people such as Peter Thiel and headed by Alex Karp, Palantir is a big data company specializing in software tooling and data integration for various organizations. But the big question is, amidst a shaky tech economy in the United States, what is with the unprecedented rise? Here's the answer: the IDF and the United States. Palantir has been an ongoing partner for ICE since 2014 and has been a larger partner in the current deportation efforts under Trump's 2025 administration. Further, they have secured a long-term partnership with Israel in developing AI-powered, fully automated drones. Yet, for how massive, how monumentally influential Palantir is becoming, there's little information in how their services are being developed and exactly how they're being implemented. We only know they are rising fast and have no plan to slow down. Alex Karp, the CEO, stated in an investor's call, "Palantir is here to disrupt and make the institutions we partner with the very best in the world, and when it's necessary, to scare our enemies and, on occasion, kill them." As per Palantir's relationship with the IDF, we do know they are developing models for AI drone strikes, according to a few outlets. In the United States, federal records showed Palantir was awarded $30 million from ICE to build Immigration Lifecycle Operating System, or better known as Immigration OS, a new system that tracks the activities of various immigrants or people just visiting the United States. Likely a large-scale system that will facilitate the storage and application of biometrics and GPS location tracking. And for drones, despite the supposed sophistication, the United Nations has reported a near-record civilian casualty rate of 70% in Gaza. And in the United States, we're witnessing the Trump administration ignoring court orders to stop deportation without proper due process, something we saw ignored with Kilmar Abrego Garcia and Burmese migrants being deported and trafficked to South Sudan, a country they have no relation to. In a similar logic of Agamben, it's the exception of law, the breaking of it, that allows for a system predicated on legality to exist. The law itself is a facade, but rather than obfuscation, the new necropolitical logic here is a facade centered upon death. There's a common question around contemporary conflicts and the handling of global immigration. That is cruelty the point here? If excommunicating and disappearing dissidents or blatantly destroying a population is the goal, wouldn't minimizing that exposure, harm, be the strategically smart thing to do? Someone like Foucault might argue, absolutely. The organizations and states who do things out in the open risk limiting their capabilities. It's far better to execute power in the shadows. Yet, in a disturbing turn, Mbembe may argue that cruelty, suffering, limiting people's humanity is the full recognition of power by death. Like the time of feudal punishment, the visual, the tactile consequence is the point, thus embodying this very necropolitics. In December 2024, United Healthcare's CEO Brian Thompson was killed. A Senate report had just revealed how insurance companies like United Healthcare used algorithms to systemically deny care, how their software kicked patients out of nursing homes against doctors' orders, how some patient assessments were made before a doctor had even examined them. People die from these decisions, not in dramatic ways, but often slowly, inevitably, when the care they need is deemed too expensive by an algorithm optimizing for profit. The supposed gunman, Luigi Mangione, wasn't even a United Healthcare customer, yet he became a symbol of a rage that builds when systems repeatedly show us some lives just don't matter. For every headline about Luigi, the millions of people who die due to profiteering go silently. Their denied claims don't make news. We've internalized systems of profit such that we cannot recognize the violence inherent in it. As we speak, the United Healthcare investors are suing the company for accepting more care claims after their CEO was killed. They are suing United Healthcare because they aren't denying care enough. And even in public healthcare, even when you're not being denied care in a private system, you're still being written off. In countries with universal healthcare, such as Britain's NHS, the threat of privatization is being felt. Privatization and profiteering of medicine, and even the political threat of austerity that has hit all throughout Europe. Welfare states, where the social contract is eroding. Like the concept of violence, necropolitics isn't a political logic of immediate material violence, but the slow withering of life, the decades of policy and economic decisions that dispossess working people, rendering citizens less human, placing them in theoretical death worlds, undead in the sense they aren't them. They are social security numbers, case numbers, policyholders, employees, husks able to do the necessary workload for executives to purchase their second yacht. The decision-making here is quickly turning to algorithms, automating the decision-making process. We mentioned earlier that when the logic is death, it's handed out to everyone. The turn to algorithms, automation, embodies this. Rather than humans deciding the fate of undead subjects, the undead decide the fate of the already undead. From CEOs proposing AI replace teachers, but schools remain. Daycares so that parents can slave away. Beta testing, AI-based driving to the general public with no collective consent. To AI-based drone warfare. The logic of death behind movement creates a synonymous feedback loop. At some point, it will be dished out unanimously, whether you're the undead wage slave struggling to make ends meet, or the arrogant, wealthy executives designing the algorithms. The algorithms and automation process won't discern between the two. Yet, the digital necropolitical system wants us to believe it's inevitable. But in its very nature, algorithms contain choices. Every risk score embodies someone's judgment about whose bodies matter. Every digital barrier reflects a decision about who deserves to move freely through the world. Necropolitics is theoretical. It may impart a logic of undead between a state of alive and not yet dead, but we do not lack agency. If systems aren't just accidents, they are working as designed, design being the key word here. If so, the architecture can and will be remolded. Agency is still fundamental to our existence, and what has been built can be unbuilt. How and when is the question. But we should never approach the logic of necropolitics as something fixed, stagnant, and permanently undead. Thank you all for watching and making it to the end. I have a huge request to all who made it here. Consider dropping just a few dollars a month. It's always a gamble whether YouTube will like these videos or not, and pledging just a few dollars a month makes making these videos much easier on a consistent basis, without fear that I'll be demonetized or hit from the algorithm. With that, I want to give an extra large shout out to these patrons and supporters, Jay Roberts and Cedric Watman. With this, I hope to see you all in the next.